Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio.
Hello and happy Friday. I am Tracy V. Wilson.
And I'm Holly Fry.
This week, number one, just so listeners know, we're having to record this completely over because of a technical problem. Hopefully just the behind the scenes, not the actual episodes. Those sounded okay, fingers crossed. But in addition to that, because of our travel schedule and also how we like to have two-part episodes run the same week without other stuff in between them, we are recording this episode 4 weeks after the one that we recorded on Sarah Winnemucca, but they are only coming out like 2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
So it's going to feel kind of like there's a theme for a period of time in the podcast that in terms of when we actually recorded things farther apart. Also, researching Sarah Winnemucca and the brief reference to the peace policy in that episode was definitely what led me to wanting to talk about Ely S. Parker, who one of the most complicated people I have needed to write an episode about.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about a lot of indigenous people in the 19th century who have, to a greater or lesser degree, felt like they and their people needed to assimilate with white culture in order to survive. And I am in no way judging any person who is a descendant of any of those people and is like living with the ramifications of those decisions. I feel like it's impossible to know which decisions would have been the best ones in those contexts, but this is the person who has had the most powerful and the most power and the most influence in terms of the impact of those decisions, right?
Right.
We've talked about a lot of people who have either themselves wanted to assimilate with white culture, or they wanted their children or their people to assimilate, and their decisions were impacting themselves and their families and maybe also their specific tribe or nation. And then Ely S. Parker became the Commissioner of Indian Affairs and was making these policies related to all of the indigenous people in the United States. And, you know, a lot of those decisions continuing to have impact and influence today.
Yeah. We didn't refer back to it really in the episode, but we mentioned at the top of the episode that his mother had this vision of him being this person who succeeded in both worlds and, you know, and I always wonder how much that was informing his decisions, whether consciously or subconsciously, right? I'll Star Wars it up and make it about how Anakin is told he's the chosen one, and that ultimately like causes problems. And whether or not this is a case of like all of that weight being put on him inherently would have probably impacted his decisions, whether he realized it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the episode, we talked about this documentary from 1999, which obviously now is 25 years ago.
What? Shush. No, it isn't. It's 6 years ago.
So weird. And that it was shown on PBS. It was still available for me to watch on one of the PBS websites. But they talked to a number of indigenous historians and scholars and leaders as part of that documentary. And a lot of them really talked about his personal ambition and how they felt like his personal ambition had led him to make decisions that were a betrayal of his people and his roots. And that reminded me a little bit of something we talked about with Sarah Winnemucca about how her people, a big focus was everyone making decisions collaboratively. And so the fact that she went and did things on her own and made decisions on her own was really controversial. And I see some parallels there to Ely Parker, clearly having a desire to, you know, based on his own writing and things that he said that himself, like having a desire to really excel at things like the English language, and really wanting to get into positions of power, and then how that was viewed among the Seneca who were being directly impacted by decisions that he was making, like with Ulysses Grant and in Washington and all of that. Truly a remarkable life, though. Like, even if we stopped before becoming Commissioner of Indian Affairs, the process of like going through an education and becoming an engineer and doing the engineering work that he did, and then being the person who wrote out the surrender terms at Appomattox during the Civil War, all of those things are fascinating to me. He's actually been depicted in a couple of movies related to the Civil War. I don't remember the names of either of them. But in one of them, he doesn't have any lines. And in the other one, he has like one line, which really does not in any way encapsulate his very long relationship with Grant and how close the two of them were and how involved they were in one another's work.
Yeah.
So, yes, whatever's happening on your weekend, I hope that it is as great as it could possibly be. We will be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow, and we will have a brand new episode on Monday. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.